Last week, we heard all about God's creation. And on the first day, God separated the light from the darkness, and he called the light day and the dark night. And on the second day, he made water and the sky. And on the third day, God made dry land and plants and trees to fill the land. And on the fourth day, God made the sun to shine in the day and the moon to shine at night. And on the fifth day, God made the birds, and they filled the sky, and he made the fish, and they filled the sea. And on the sixth day, God filled the dry land with people and animals of every shape and size. But most special of all, God made people. God made the woman named Eve and the man named Adam. God made the whole beautiful world, and it was very good. It couldn't help but be good because God himself was good. Now God put Adam and Eve in a very beautiful garden. Where everything was good and filled with life and light and joy. It couldn't help but be good because God was with them in the garden. God gave them all sorts of good things. Trees, and plants, and animals. Everything was good. It all was good. And it couldn't help but be good because everything was the way God wanted it to be. God was the Lord, the King over all creation. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. And not long after God did all these very good things, but a very sad thing happened. Adam and Eve chose to turn away from the good things of God and go their own way. Can you believe it? Here is what happened. God gave Adam and Eve one rule, and although there were many trees in the garden, they could eat from one And though there were many trees in the garden they could eat from, there was just one they were not allowed to eat from. God told Adam and Eve, "Do not eat the fruit. If you do, death and sadness and tears will come. Trust me on this. I know what is best for you." Now, the serpent came to Eve and said, "Did God really say you can't eat fruit from any tree in the garden?" And Eve said to the serpent, "No, God said we may eat from all the trees in the garden except from the one in the middle of the garden. In fact, I'm pretty sure God said we can't even touch it or he will die." "No, you won't die," the serpent said to the woman. "Take the fruit, eat it. God doesn't want you to be like him, knowing the difference between good and evil." Now, I don't know about you guys in the audience watching, but I don't think the serpent is telling the truth. What do you think? Do you think Eve will believe him, or will she trust God? Well, let's see what happens next. Well, Eve walked right over to the tree. She looked up at the fruit, and she decided for herself it looked pretty good. Now, she didn't want to ask for God's help. She just did what she wanted to. She took some of the fruit, and going against everything God had commanded, she ate it. And then, to make things worse, she brought Adam over to the tree and offered some to him too. Do you think Adam reminded her of God's command? No, he didn't. He just took the fruit and ate it without a single word. And then suddenly, Adam and Eve understood what they had done. For the first time, they knew what sin was. They had turned away from God's good way and followed their own way instead. Adam and Eve realized that they were naked, and they tried to cover up their shame by sewing together fig leaves to make clothes for themselves. And when the Lord walked into the garden and called out to them, they were ashamed and they ran away and hid from God. But the Lord called out to them. He found them where they were hiding. And he said, "What have you done?" Adam blamed Eve, and Eve blamed the serpent. But they were really both to blame for they had chosen their own way rather than following God's way. Adam and Eve were sad, for they knew what they had done wrong. And God was very, very sad, for he knew how hard it was going to be for them now that sin and death and sadness had filled the whole world. Everything had changed now that sin had entered the world. God also knew Adam and Eve couldn't stay in his perfect garden. Sin had made that impossible. So because God is merciful and loving and good, God made clothes for Adam and Eve to cover them properly, and he sent them out of the garden forever. And God placed angels and a flaming sword to guard the way to the tree of life. Never again would mankind walk in this perfect garden with God. What a sad, sad story. But thankfully, that's not the end of God's big story. The good news is that God is so good and that he loves us so much that he already had a plan to save us from sin. God promised Adam and Eve on the day that they left the garden that one day, one of their descendants would come to save them from their sin. And not only that, but he would be powerful enough to crush the serpent forever. And I bet you know who that is. That's right, it is Jesus. Jesus is the promised one, the serpent crusher, the only one who had no sin and was able to take away the sins of the whole world.